Good afternoon, everyone. Anthony Alaka with Torrey Hills Capital, and welcome to the Vizsla Silver webcast for March 21st, 2023. Hope everyone's doing well, and thanks for taking the time to join our virtual lunch today. We're very excited to bring you Vizsla Silver. They are a well-funded Canadian-based mineral exploration company focused on its flagship Panuco Silver Gold project in Mexico. The Panuco project is emerging as a Tier 1 asset and has grown to become a very large-scale, high-grade project and an excellent mining jurisdiction. The project has shown some of the highest grade silver intercepts in Mexico in recent years. In fact, in only about the last 10 or 11 months, the company has almost doubled its indicated ounces in its most recent mineral update. Vizsla Silver trades on the New York Stock Exchange and the TSX Venture under the ticker VZLA. It's currently trading with a market cap of only about $285 million US. With the most recent resource update, solid cash position, and continued potential to grow the reserve, we feel that there's plenty of upside in the stock. With us today to discuss Vizsla Silver's operations and growth strategy going forward is the company's president and CEO, Michael Konnert. Michael, it's great to have you on today, and thanks for taking the time to bring our viewers up to speed on Vizsla Silver. Obviously, a lot of exciting developments are happening with the company in the sector, and I'm excited to have you share those with the group. But before I turn it over to Michael, I just want to say that if you have any questions during the presentation, simply type them into the Q&A or chat box, and we'll make sure that they get answered. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Michael Konnert. Michael, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Anthony, and it's great to be here on the West Coast Lunch Hour. It's my pleasure to be talking about Vizsla Silver. And as you mentioned, my name is Michael Konnert. I am the founder and CEO of Vizsla Silver. And I think the future is going to be very bright for our company here. And to kind of think about where we're going, I think it's worth talking about where we came from. And so Vizsla is a company that I started back in 2017 as a private exploration company. I took it through an IPO in 2018, and really we started as a $2 million market cap company. But over the last 5 years, we've grown from a micro cap company listed only on the venture exchange to now, on Friday, we were a $500 million Canadian company in market cap. We've come off a little bit, listed on the New York Stock Exchange. But what's really important, of course, is that we have the world's largest undeveloped high-grade silver resource, and it continues to grow. And so, if you think about what we're able to do in a few short years, going from a very small company, a private company, to, what we are now in the public markets, I think that same type of growth trajectory is achievable moving forward here. And our vision with Vizsla is to become one of the world's largest single asset silver primary producers through our project. So that's what I'll be talking about today. I'll make forward-looking statements. I'm sure I already have. I touched on this vision here, and I'll explain why I think this is important. But again, our vision is to become one of the world's largest single asset silver primary producers through this project. And the reason that we want to become this large producer is because most investors these days have a problem. And that problem is that they have very little, if any, allocation towards precious metals. And, a decade of zero interest rates and free money has created what really became a speculative and venture capital bubble, and a debt bubble that we're starting to see now deflate. And, over the last week, we were in California for a conference, and obviously the topic, the buzz was really all about the Silicon Valley Bank, these bank failures. We've seen Credit Suisse now go to UBS, I believe. So we're starting to see, I think, the first of a number of dominoes fall, and probably what will be a return to safe haven, or return to real assets and hard assets. And we love silver. We think silver is the best metal to invest in because it has the renewable energy, the electronic applications, the investment applications. Really, it's gold's little brother. Anything that gold can do, silver can do as well. So it has a lot of reasons to like it. But one of the biggest reasons I think why you want to be invested in silver, and the best way to play it is through leverage to the equities. But the reason you want to be invested in silver is that most investors worldwide have practically zero exposure to precious metals. And we saw this, with gold and silver going up almost double digits in terms of silver in the last few trading sessions of last week. As soon as capital starts to flow into the space, the metal prices rise, but also the equities tend to really outperform. And, true to that, we saw Vizsla do something, very similar where it outpaced the price of silver increase as well. So our shares have gone up about 30% over the last few months, and part of that was being added to the ETF. So we're starting to see, I think, the early innings of a more secular approach to precious metals, and I think that's kind of like trying to put the contents of the Hoover Dam through a garden hose. There's just not a lot of places for the world's capital when it all starts moving towards precious metals and safe haven trade. So I think we're starting to see that. That's why we like silver. And our answer to that problem is to build, our company here, which we believe will be a very large scale producer of silver and gold in Mexico. And so, I talked about earlier how I had started Vizsla as a small company. In 2019, we went to Mexico and ended up consolidating an entire silver and gold district here, the Pánuco district that we'll talk about today. And this is a little different than most companies. We didn't buy this off of a major producer. We didn't buy it off of a prospector. We went to the owners of this district, the private Mexican mining companies, and did a deal with two of the major owners of each half of the district to consolidate this project for the first time in modern history. It's a project that dates back over 400 years. It was discovered by the Spanish, but it had never been systematically explored. And so we've been able to do that and leverage the existing infrastructure there that this district has had through years and years of small scale and local production, and use that basically to explore this district for the first time in modern history. And we have a team that are comprised of experts and very strong technical experience that come from companies like Agnico, Pan American, First Majestic, the who's who of major producers in Mexico. And as Anthony mentioned earlier in the introduction, we've recently put out our resource. That was in January of this year. But we do have a number of avenues to re-rate later this year, including a resource update in the second half of 2023, as well as economics, looking to put out economics at some point following that resource update. So this year we have a 90,000 meter drill program planned with 7 drill rigs, and we're in an excellent position to execute here. We have 100% ownership of this district that I talked about. We bought out each of those private Mexican mining companies. We did that in 2021, and we own this district entirely now. We have over $56 million Canadian in cash, and we have zero debt.
Quick question, Mike, from one of the viewers. What's the minimum ounce per year production to become classified as a large producer versus like a mid-tier? Well,
Typically what you'll see is, for a single asset, a large producer would be about 12 million ounces of silver equivalent. A very large producer would be about 15 to 18. And, some of the largest single asset producers would be in excess of 18. And so we're targeting, our stretch target is to achieve 20 million ounces of silver equivalent annual production.
Wow. Thank you.
But, a lot of the companies that you'll see, or historically that had been listed on the New York Stock Exchange and referred to as silver companies, they might do anywhere from 2 to 8 million ounces of silver equivalent per annum. So the playing field is pretty wide there. There's a lot of different players in it. There's the smaller producers. There's the gold producers that produce silver as a byproduct, but very rare to actually find a large single asset silver producer. And when you do, they typically trade in the billions of market cap.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so looking at our company snapshot here, we have about 208 million shares outstanding. This is after our most recent capital raise. These funds are going to take us into 2024. So we're well funded for this year's objectives and into next year. This average trading volume has probably gone up in the last few weeks here. We trade between the New York and the Canadian exchanges about 500,000 shares a day. So we have a healthy volume. We are covered by a number of analysts, all with the consensus buy rating, north of 350, I believe, these days in Canadian dollars. So we see a consensus that's showing a large premium to where we are right now. And today on the Canadian exchange, we trade about $1.88 to $1.90. We've recently been as high as $2.20 on the back of ETF edition. And one thing I always like to point out here is that insiders, directors, advisors, the insiders of the company, we own about 15% of the company. We purchased at rounds higher than this. The biggest insider buy was at $2.50, which was in the summer of 2021. So we eat our own cooking. We buy the stock. I just bought some stock recently, as well as other insiders. So a lot of companies will tell you that they're undervalued, and you don't see any insider buying. We like to buy the stock. We don't feel like we own enough. And I'll also point out here, our institutional shareholders, companies like Fidelity or groups like Fidelity, Franklin Templeton, Sprott, RBC Asset Management. We have a very strong institutional shareholder list here.
In your institutional shareholders, in terms of like cost basis, have they been in the stock for a while? Or are these recent additions?
Well, they would all be at a higher price. I should say a lot of them have come in between $1.85 and higher, $2.50 in deals, and then on the market. And some groups like Fidelity have just come in at $1.65. So they saw an attractive entry point, about 20 cents less than what we're at right now.
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
So I won't get into every background here, but what I will kind of summarize this is that we have a team that has deep connections to Mexico, deep connections to producing companies in Mexico. And, so the key people here have, decades of experience with companies like Pan American directly in Mexico. And Jesus Velador is someone that I always like to touch on here, our VPX. Jesus actually is from Durango, Mexico, which is quite close to our project. He has discovered some major discoveries in Mexico, including being involved in the mag silver discovery of Juanicipio, which was transformative for both Fresnillo and mag silver. So he's been around major discoveries before, and he's an expert in this field, and he's leading our exploration. Also on the board here, I'd like to touch on Craig Perry, who many of you might recognize from Skeena Resources, NextGen Energy. He's something of a legend in our industry, and our chairman and my business partner as well. But I also like to point out Simon Smirlik. Simon is director of Vizsla, but he's also the COO of Ausenco Engineering. And why that matters is that Ausenco builds the world's best mines. They just built Silvercrest Las Chispas mine with a huge amount of success, and they did that in Mexico in the last 18 months or so. So very good experience. The rest of the board is directly aligned in experience in meaningful ways for us as well. Now, we do like to talk about ESG, but for us, what it means is that Vizsla is committed to responsible mining done right. And so we operate with accountability and transparency. We're trustworthy stewards of the local environment. We provide a safe, respectful, and healthy work environment. But really the most important thing to me is that the communities that we work in, we provide long-term benefits for them. From when I first came down to the project to now, I've seen a market difference and improvement in what appears, what you can tell from the kind of the community happiness, the employment levels, the quality of living has improved. And, we've been a consistent employer for over 3 years now in the district, and we've employ everybody that we can to work with us. So I feel like we are committed certainly to responsible mining done right, but really the most important thing there is that we provide those long-term benefits for us being there to the local communities. I won't touch on each of these, but we have an exemplary safety record, million hours long-term incident, loss of time incident free. We hired 70% of our workforce, our local residents, everybody that we could hire from the communities we have. But this all is accumulated into community agreements that we have here with 30-year operating agreements with 4 of the 5 local ejido groups, which is the landowner groups. And in Mexico, this is often an issue for most companies, but we were able to do this early on in the life of the company and sign these long-term agreements for production. So this is an example of that responsible mining done right. Now, this is a long introduction perhaps to the project, but all of those points are quite important because I think it speaks to the quality of the team and the quality of the work that we do as a team here around this project. But as I mentioned, we've consolidated this district for the first time in modern history, and it's a unique project because it was discovered by a fellow named Francisco de Ibarra in 1565, I believe, and he had been making his way over from the Caribbean side of Mexico to the Pacific side. And on his way, he discovered 2 major silver towns that turned into major producers like Durango and Fresnillo. And of course, the world's largest silver producer, Fresnillo, is named after the town that he discovered. The third city that he discovered and subsequently died at was the Panuco district here that we have. It had never really achieved the same notoriety as Durango and Fresnillo had. Because it had always been essentially held by multiple claim holders and really a lot of different concession holders had different claims here. So it was never consolidated and never had the ability to be systematically explored. But over time, 2 families started to consolidate each half. And then in 2019, we consolidated those 2 family halves. And from that, we were able to make a number of major discoveries here, but the most important discoveries that we've made are here in the west: Copala, Napoleon, Josephine, Tajitos, Cristiano. This is where 95% of our resources are, and it's all within about a 3-kilometer radius of the center point here. And this isn't to say that we've discovered everything there. We've actually only explored about 10% of the district as a whole. It's just a major large-scale district that takes time to explore, but we started drilling here in the west, and that's where we made our discoveries. I suspect we're going to find resources all throughout this district in time. What sets this project apart is that it's very close to the city of Mazatlan. Mazatlan is a coastal city similar to Puerto Vallarta, a little bit smaller, and that's about an hour away on the coast. This is about an hour inland from Mazatlan, and the way that you get there is on one of 2 highways. There's a toll highway that runs through the property, and then there's the older highway that they replaced with the toll highway, but still operates. And these roads that cut through the property give us excellent access to exploration, gives us excellent access to our resource area. So the infrastructure here is better than I've ever seen, really in any mining project. There's high tension power that runs through the property as well. It's really an excellent location. Now we are systematically exploring this district here, and this year will all be about resource expansion and further exploration with 7 drill rigs turning across the property. I see a question here. Any project in the company pipeline that has potential to become a second mine for the company? Well, we do have other projects in the area here that certainly could be explored and added into the company, but really our focus is the silver district in Mexico. And I'll explain why that is. We almost have, in a sense, three different properties within this land package here, because it's so big. It's 14 kilometers in strike across. Another way to look at that is comparing it to the island of Manhattan. So this project itself is huge. We could operate three mining centers or more here, I would say. So we haven't felt the need to build up the pipeline just yet, although we do have a fairly robust corporate development pipeline within the company, both groups that look at us and projects that we look at as well. So this is our resource that we put out in January of 2023. And as I said at the open, this is now the world's largest undeveloped high-grade silver project. And this is really just a moment in time here. We're continuing to drill, we're continuing to grow these resources, but at the end of last year, we put a resource cutoff where we had all the drill data come in by the fall. And then in January, we released this information. So it is already stale in the sense that we've continued to drill from that cutoff date. But you can see in the indicated category, we have 105 million ounces of silver equivalent. And in the inferred category, 114 million ounces of silver equivalent. But what's really important here is the grade. The grade is about 2.5 times the average resource grade in Mexico and Latin American projects. And in some cases, in other areas, the grade is even much higher than that, 3 times the average grade. Say, the Copala area here, the sub area in the inferred is 627 grams silver equivalent over the resource in Copala. So there's some spectacular grade here. Probably the best way to demonstrate it's on the next slide, so I'll go and I'll show that. But I'll point out here that 93% of our resources are in precious metals. The majority is in silver, but we do have a very good gold content as well. So we have about 1 million ounces of gold on its own here in the project. And it's costing us 15 cents an ounce to make discoveries, to find a new ounce here since March of 2022. So it's a very capital efficient drilling here for us to make these resources. This is the better way, I would say, to look at how does Vizsla compare in terms of size and grade to other projects and kind of the universe of projects in Mexico and Latin America. So what you'll see here, the gold dot is the measured and indicated grade, and the black dot is the inferred grade. And these two bars is our project here, Panuco at 150 gram cutoff, which is to say a lower cutoff than the 250 gram cutoff here, which is more likely a scenario with a higher cutoff closer to production that you'll see in other projects. And so you can see at the 250 gram cutoff, we're really second only to Mag Silver, and well, I should say second to Mag Silver here, but a little bit behind Las Chispas. Las Chispas really is an outlier, but Mag Silver is an excellent target. And Mag's been drilling and has drilled for a decade plus, and they have about 250 million ounces. We have about 220, and we've only explored 10% of our project, and we have a huge amount of upside and huge amount of drilling and exploration left to do. But you can see our grade is really quite in line with Mag. And if for those that aren't familiar with Mag has about a $2 billion market cap, and is considered one of the most successful silver companies really in modern history.
Mike, a question that just came across. What price are you using for the various metals for cutoff for classification in the resource estimates?
So our metal price assumptions, $24 silver, 1,800 gold, $1.10 lead per pound, and $1.35 zinc per pound.
Thank you.
No problem. And our success as of recently has really been driven by this Copala structure here. So just to give a bit of orientation, back to this map here. We're going to be talking about the west primarily here in the resource area. Copala is our main vein. Napoleon is the secondary vein, and we have other structures in that area. But just to orient yourself, it's Copala structure is what we'll be talking about here. And Copala is quite a bit different than what you typically see in Mexico. Its orientation is a little bit different. Instead of a typical vertical subvertical structure, it runs at first about a 30-degree dip, and then it goes down to about 50. So on average, it's about a 45-degree dip angle. So that's one thing that's a little bit different about Copala. It's flatter line. But what's really important about Copala is that it's on average 10 meters thick across over 1.1 kilometers, 1,100 meters of strike, 400 meters down dip, open in all directions, but 10 meters thick. And the grade here is really quite impressive as well. And that's that 516 in the indicated category and 617 in the inferred category. Copala is wide open for expansion, both directions along strike, north and south along strike. And there is the potential to expand it down dip as well, but we're continuing to drill, north and south along strike here. Copala, and basically in less than a year, we were able to drill off half of our resources here at Copala, and we expect it to continue to grow. Now, just to put that in context, the average thickness of a structure that's being mined in Mexico underground is probably 1.5 meters to 2 meters on average, and then the grade is about 200. So this is 5 times that average thickness at 10 meters thick at 2.5 times the grade. So really, an outlier in the silver space. Now, Copala continues to grow, as I said, along strike north and south. But what we've discovered here is there's the potential for the depth extent of Copala to have been uplifted through faulting and brought closer to surface to the east. And so we are targeting what we refer to as the uplifted Copala target, the uplifted block of Copala. And we've made some inferences based on rock type and some early drilling. But we suspect that this offers a very positive and high potential opportunity for us to expand and to grow the Copala resources about 300 meters to the east. So we're very excited about this Copala uplifted target, and we're drilling that as we speak right now. Cristiano, another high grade area here. This is actually some of the highest grades in the whole district, where we've seen, resource grades of 900 grams silver equivalent. Really quite spectacular numbers here, and open along strike and at depth continue to grow. And then Napoleon was our main resource area that we discovered back in 2020, and now have grown into over a 3-kilometer long structure that's continuously mineralized down to about 600 meters in depth. There's still lots of room for us to grow Napoleon, certainly at depth, but also some areas along strike as well. This is slightly lower grade than or it's not as high grade, I should say, as Copala. Still is very good grade, but this will likely be in a mine plan, and could very well be part of blended ore with Copala. So we talked about the western area of our Pánuco district. You can see here there's a lot of color on this map here, and the color refers to the rock chip samples. The red demonstrates veins running through the property, but you can see there's a lot of areas that don't have any colors or don't have any veins in this district. And it's not because there aren't any veins there or because there's no mineralization there. We just haven't had the opportunity to get to that point yet. We haven't mapped and sampled the entire property. And that's not because we're lazy and the guys are just hanging out. Everybody's hard at work, and everybody's been working for years here. But really, we've had a full-time mapping team covering the property, And we've got about 50% done so far here on a 1 to 1,000 scale. So there's still so much more we don't know about this district, and that we will find out. But of course, our time has been consumed in a lot of ways with just working on the areas that we are familiar with, and drilling in the west, growing the resource area, and also sampling and mapping around known mines and areas that come with history here in this area. But we will continue to explore this district. And you asked, there's a question earlier about what does our pipeline look like in order for us to become a large scale producer. Well, already what we envision here is there's the potential to have a 20 million ounce per annum producing facility just in the west alone. As I mentioned, the resource that we have, which is one of the world's, it is the world's largest high grade undeveloped silver resource, sits here in the west. It's focused here in the west, but 7 kilometers away, we have this center here in Animas and San Antonio. You could very easily have a production facility here. And then in the east, we've done very little work so far because of the nature of this being about 14 kilometers away from, along the road, 14 kilometers away from the center of mass here in the west. So we do have more work to be done in the east here, and I could see this continuing to grow. But I can see a future where you really have kind of almost 3 separate projects in a way, where you have your production in the west, exploration and development in the center, and then early stage exploration in the east. So that's how we look at this project as a whole here.
If you could go back to that map, can you this 90,000 meter drill program, where are you targeting in that? Are you near San Antonio or are you staying more closer to where Copala and doing some infill drilling there and things like that?
So the majority of drilling will be conducted around Copala this year. So I would say that probably about 40,000 meters, give or take 10%, will be occurring to the north, the south of Copala, the uplifted block to the east, and then 1 rig would be infill drilling and also testing Cristiano. Mm-hmm. So we'd have 4 rigs in this area. We'll have 1 rig on the southern extent of Napoleon. We'll have another rig testing La Luisa, which is to the west of Napoleon. So that's 1, 2, 5. And then we have another rig that's kind of cruising around and looking at exploration targets. Could be the Cuatro de Mayo up here. Could be Tecolote, Descubridora. We have a number of targets in the west that we're considering to test. And we like to get to those throughout the year, but really the highest upside and highest ROI drilling for us and shareholders, I believe, is expanding Copala, the resources at Copala, and looking for near resource discovery potential like the uplifted block around Copala.
Even the La Luisa results you reported yesterday were extremely impressive. It like seems like every time you step out, you hit some type of bonanza grade, result.
Yeah, we are very fortunate in that sense. The real challenge, of course, is, if you're a small micro cap exploration company, and you can go drill 5 meters at a kilo or 10 meters at a kilo, and that's your headline press release. That's really good, and it excites people. But for us, it's finding that balance between the nice numbers, and which we can find pretty much a lot of places throughout the district, but really finding areas that carry volume. And La Luisa to us is both of those things, and it's exciting because it looks like it has the potential to have a very high volume ore shoot there, and could very well be another analog to Napoleon, but it also carries the very nice high grade as well. So our team has done a great job, led by Jesus there, of really focusing on finding the discoveries that are going to add ounces quickly, but add ounces at higher grades.
Would you ever consider splitting up the property? I mean, looks like you have three potential projects there. What if someone were to come to you and say, "Hey, we want, what you have in the West," or is this you want to keep everything together as one package?
Well, our vision and how this all fits into our vision is that we want to be a very, very large single asset primary silver primary producer. So this is going to be one of these transformative assets as a whole, I think, for a company, for Vizsla, or if someone finds us so irresistible that they have to take us over, that's always a possibility as well. But I think this property package is very valuable as a whole, but we're always kind of, we're commercial people, so we always look at opportunities, but our intention is to drive this whole property package forward and produce from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this might be a good opportunity. I don't know if there are any other. I'm looking at the chat. I don't see any questions, but if any of the audience wanted to ask anything.
Yeah. If you have any questions, just type it into the Q&A or chat box. But for the sake of time, I definitely want to leave some Q&A for the end. So I'll definitely stop you if something comes in.
Perfect. So, this is another way to look at the prospectivity of the West here. Let's see here. What is the ultimate objective? So our ultimate objective, is really to fill the gap. I think, like I said, I think there's a problem for most investors, which is they don't have allocation to precious metals. So I think there's a huge upside in precious metals and industrial metals like silver, which has both qualities. But at the same time, industry has a big problem, and that problem is that there's not a lot of supply, and there's not a lot of new supply of metals coming online, and whereas silver has most of its production comes from byproducts in large base metals mines in South America. There's really not a lot of silver primary assets being moved to production. So we see that owning a large producer and selling silver is going to be something that's increasingly valuable to society in the future. So we want to fill that gap and be that large scale producer. That's the ultimate objective.
When speaking of production, the question just came in: what is the time frame to actually produce? It seems like every time you drill, it's like you could probably drill this property for years and years and years. So, what is the time frame, and when do you expect to kind of take that next step to move toward production, and when will you be in production?
Well, that's kind of the thing, right? Someone could you could have this project and you could just be drilling till the cows come home and hitting nice high grade, and that would be good for news releases, but wouldn't really meet our objective. And so for us, our timing is it's early. It's not you're not really supposed to start putting kind of production dates until you have the economic studies and things like that. But we do see a pathway to production in 2027, 2028 as a potential time frame. In order to achieve that, we need to follow, with our objectives here, which is, the updated resource in the second half of 2023, a PEA likely in 2024, and then we would move through feasibility study into construction, and likely the time frame around that, if we move efficiently and effectively, looking at other comparables, would be probably comfortably be 2027.
Yeah, which is great. And then the PEA, obviously next year, you'll have a lot, obviously do more drilling between now and then. But like for you, I mean, obviously you almost doubled your resource estimate in 10 to 11 months. What are your thoughts on how much you think the resource estimate can change after this current drill program?
Well, I think there's a point in time where you get a little bit of diminishing returns, and the way that you think about this is you look back to, say, Silvercrest about 4 or 5 years ago. Silvercrest has just gone into production. So I think what shareholders and others want to see is, are we de-risking the project? Are we just growing the resource, or are we growing the resource that's going to go into a mine plan and be subsequently de-risked and moved into to PEA stage and onward to production? So, the focus for us isn't just to grow, and this is why we're focusing on the western part of the project, because it doesn't make sense for us to go and do resource drilling, out here in the east. What we're focused on is drilling in the west here to build out a mine plan around Copala, Napoleon, Tajitos, and Cristiano. So I do think that we are targeting a 30 to 40% increase in resources for this upcoming resource update. But our goal is to show the potential of a 20 million ounce per annum producer. In order to do that, we need to get it closer to about 275 to 300 million ounces of silver equivalent. I'm totally convinced that that this is a 1 billion ounce silver district, very similar to San Dimas, which is up the road, that built Silver Wheaton, it built Goldcorp. These are very kind of long-lived, large-scale precious metals camps in Mexico. I think we have one of them, but I don't think it makes sense for us to go and serially dilute the investor base by kind of raising money just to drill. I think it makes sense for us to move this into production and be a cash flowing company.
Yeah. So you obviously want to be a producer. One of the questions is, are you open to a joint venture type partnership?
We would be in the right context. We're absolutely open to things that make commercial sense. But our primary focus is just to use the treasury that we have on hand here and drive that forward into building a mine plan and a resource here.
What percentage is open pit mining? What are you estimating will be open pit mining?
Well, ideally it'll be 0%. Will be completely underground, and the reason for that is that it's typically what's been done here in this part of Mexico. It's also what the trade-off studies have shown us to be the most effective and efficient mining would be underground, and it's also the most environmentally friendly as well.
Yeah. So in terms of, you have this, obviously you're talking about a PEA in 2024. You have this 90,000 meter drill program now. Can you kind of talk about, after this 90,000, what comes next that kind of sets you up for the PEA, or is it too early to even discuss what happens after this 90,000 drill program?
Well, certainly we'll, I think there's a couple of things here, and investors want reasons to own the stock. And I think there's a few kind of big reasons. One is that we do have the 90,000 meters of drilling, and we do have the potential of finding another Copala, another major discovery. And you got to remember that Copala added about 100 million ounces of silver equivalent in less than a year. I don't know any other company in any exploration space that's adding that much metal that quickly. So the drill bit is a catalyst for us, and I think that's one that we're going to continue past the 90,000 meters as well. We're always going to be drilling potential new discoveries in this district, even as we build the mine. So that'll certainly come after this 90,000 meters. But really, I'm hoping that the drill data from the 90,000 meters is going to feed into what will be shown as a very robust mine plan in a PEA.
Yeah. So if you were going to guess, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, but if you're going to guess when you would publish a PEA, do you think it would be closer to the beginning of 24 or the end or the middle? Where do you see a date for PEA?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think I'm not trying to evade it, the timing, but it really is what the project tells us in terms of certain thresholds that we reach in terms of economics. If we put out a resource in 3 months and we hit those internal throughput and and production numbers in 3 months, then we would put a PEA out then. If we have to do more drilling and the timing indicates that we should drill Copala a little bit more, we'll put the resource and the PEA out after that's been done. So we're kind of moving steadily along to this forward towards this PEA, but we still just don't have all the data that we need on hand right now to do the PEA. So I respectfully can't put a time frame on it right now, unfortunately.
No, that makes sense. So when you think of Sinaloa, obviously you think of cartels. Can you speak to the safety around the property? And just, I know you talked about the resources around the property, and it's obviously there's power, there's water, but just in terms of getting there, the safety for when you get to a point where you start pulling silver out, is there any reason to be concerned in your mind?
No, originally when I first visited this project, it was the first time ever going to Sinaloa, and I have to admit, myself and Craig, our chairman, we were a bit trepidatious. We were a bit worried about, what we knew about Sinaloa, and all we knew about Sinaloa was every time we turned Netflix on, it would be El Chapo and Narcos and all this stuff. So we were a bit worried, and we, look into flights. And, it's a direct flight from Vancouver. What? That's strange. And realized that it's Mazatlan's right there. And 300,000 Canadians and Americans come down to Mazatlan every year. It's a snowbird destination. So we flew there direct, which you never really get in mining jurisdictions. It's hard to fly places direct.
Yeah.
And got there, and it was a vibrant, beautiful city. We got in a car and drove an hour up a really nice paved, perfect highway with high tension power and nice communities along the side, and got to the project, toured the project, and realized that, this opportunity likely exists because of that perception of Sinaloa being a difficult place to work. And then in the subsequent, number of years, I've taken my family down here for our family Christmas parties, or, our Vizsla Christmas party. I've taken my wife and young kids to the mine site. We've driven through here. I love going down here. Our team's never had any problems, and it's not like we're armed or have these crazy security detail at all. It's all very low key. And what we found is that Sinaloa is an excellent place to work, and I don't expect there to be any real risk of theft or anything outside of anything that's possible in Mexico as a whole. It's probably one of the better places to work in Mexico, I would say. So the community is a big part of that. The community is a mining community that has hundreds of years of history in that, and they welcome us. So it's I think it's a great place to work.
Yeah. Will the ore be processed on site or shipped out and processed?
Well, there's a couple of different products you could produce here. One would be a doré, which would could be produced at site here, or a concentrate. We are doing trade-offs here, but it's likely that either one of those would be secure and a good fine thing to produce here, and wouldn't cause any issues.
Okay. What's the population density within 50 kilometers? Is there an issue with labor or anything like that you would see?
Well, most of the men, there'd be about 500 men, I would say, within this property map here, from the various towns, Copala, and some of the smaller towns. And most of those would either have worked in mining or have been affiliated with mining at some point. So we have a lot of skilled labor already as is, that's come for that. They used to be miners in this area that have come and work for us. But about 25-30 minutes to the west, you drive through the town of Concordia. There would be probably about 75,000 people there, skilled workers, and I think a great community that you can hire from. So there's not a population density issue in the map or next to it or nearby, but you do have all of the benefits of this isn't remote in the sense that you're 4 or 5 hours from the nearest town in the middle of the Sierra Madres. This is nearby great population centers that are all familiar with mining.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are you seeing in terms of M&A activity that could give you a glimpse of the valuation should a company come in and want to acquire the company Vizsla?
Well, that's a really good question. If you go back and look at the last time there was a cycle that these projects were financed and discovered and then ultimately transacted on, you'd be going back to probably the 2007 to 2011 stretch in the market, and you'd have Palmarejo, which back then was sold, I believe, for 1.2 billion to Coeur. You'd have Tahoe, which was acquired by Pan American, and that was $1 billion transaction. You have Mine Finders, which was also acquired by Pan American, $1 billion valuation plus. These things 10 years ago routinely traded hands for $1 billion plus. That's what you're also seeing in terms of market cap right now. Actually, I have a good slide on that. 1 second. Meg Silver, Silvercrest, this is US $1 million market cap. And, you can see they trade over $1 billion. And this is right now, this isn't, top of market at all. We're trading probably, a third of what, quote unquote, fuller valuation would be for some of these companies. So there's kind of the two ways that you could see a re-rate here. One, as we move to the right-hand side of the chart and de-risk, and we already know that we have a resource that's bigger than Silvercrest. We have a resource that's comparable to Meg's. The grade is improving. These two are in production now. So moving to the right hand of the chart really has more to do with de-risking than it does with discovering more silver.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, a capital gains share re-rating through that to the tune of maybe 4 to 5 times if you're looking at our market cap right now. But when these silver companies like even Meg and Silvercrest and Pan American's changing a little bit, but there's a number of other silver companies out there that their shareholders eventually are going to be calling for them to grow their pipeline. They're going to say, where's your growth coming from?
Yeah.
And if we look back 10 years ago, these things already traded over $1 billion in transaction value. I think it's probably closer to 2 billion these days is what a true value of a project like ours would be. And that's in line with, say, a Great Bear. Great Bear is probably the best recent example of a transaction in the space, I would say.
Yeah, and there's obviously I think a huge disconnect between the market cap of the company and the true value, and I think it will for sure have its day. When you talk about the outlook for silver prices, it's all over the place, right? I've seen it as people calling for silver as high as 50 per ounce. But if we're more realistic and we talk about maybe 25 to 30 or 30 an ounce long term, first of all, what's your outlook for silver in terms of price? And I know I'm putting you on the spot, but but what is like 25 to 30, just something that's somewhat conservative, mean for the company in terms of a PEA and what you feel would be the economics of the project?
Well, the reason that we like the project is that I think it is one of these what we refer to as a tier 1 asset, which means that it can produce in pretty much any commodity price environment. And so we expected today's commodity prices for this to be very robust in terms of economics and be very positive in terms of the margins and the cash flow. But if we're looking even at this slide here right now, and if we think that our EV per ounce, what companies are getting valued at as enterprise value per ounce of silver, is $5, let's call it, at a $20 to $22 silver price, but that's 25%. If you get 25% of the price of the an ounce of silver in your enterprise value, and that goes, to $50, an ounce, and you're getting a quarter of that. I think that, these prices will all just be, your share price, your market cap will all be reflected in that amount as well. And I expect that, when you see the price of a commodity explode like that, the share prices often outperform the relative move, in commodity price. So, a $50 an ounce for silver would probably mean a 20 to maybe a $50 Vizsla. I don't know, but it would be very good for our share price.
Yeah, especially with the drill results that you've shown. Really, it's an amazing project, and I would suggest that everybody, and I'll send everybody the deck, but really take a close look at the results. That the drill results, you'll be very, very impressed. What's the estimated cost to produce an ounce when the area is producing, i.e., total cost of silver from this area?
Yeah, so typically it's a range. On the low end, you see maybe $8 or $9 an ounce. And on the high end, you can see as high as $20 an ounce. But for comparable projects to ours, I would say that we would look at a range between $9 and $12 an ounce, all in sustaining cost.
Yeah, that's great. Let's see, questions keep coming in, and and people are asking to send the deck. Yeah, we'll definitely send the deck when we conclude, for sure. I think we're going to leave it there. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I want to thank Michael Konnert, the company CEO, for coming on and getting us up to speed on Vizsla Silver. Certainly now's the time to take a look at the company, especially with all the recent and anticipated milestone announcements. And I think, as Michael alluded to earlier, I think this is the calm before the storm, where we're starting to see, what's happening with banking and things like that. I think there's going to be a look at hard assets, and silver and precious metals will certainly be beneficiary of that move. Before I wrap it up, Michael, any parting words for our guests?
Well, I just want to say thank you to everybody who was attending this presentation. I really appreciate that. And please feel free to reach out to us, info@vizslasilver.ca, or just on our website, vizslasilvercorp.com.